Why is this so weird? So welcome to the channel. So this is Sean rides BMW. This is my first live stream. So my content is just all about, sharing riding tips, whether you're a new rider or you're just getting back into riding after having some time off like myself due to injuries. So I started riding a BMW F800R 2015 back in when I officially started riding on a Ninja 250. I believe I was 29 years old. So that was, I want to say that was like 14 years ago. I'm 43 now. So about 14 years I've been riding. So I've learned a lot during that process. So I feel like I could share for those who just, getting into riding. Like I was saying earlier, if you're just getting into riding, there's always lots of questions. I still have questions after riding for 14 years. Or if, like I said, you're coming back after time off, it can be tough. In the last 5 years, I haven't ridden much, between shoulder surgery, hip replacement. It's, you almost feel like a beginner again after having that time off. Over the last 5 years, I'm maybe average like 500 miles a year, so very, very little riding. So my first motorcycle I started riding on was a Ninja 250, and I think that's one of the think about one of the biggest mistakes new riders have. And everybody I know who starts riding seems like you got to get a big bike. You got to get a big bike, the biggest bike you can possibly get with no experience. It's such a huge mistake. Get a bike that you can handle. If you're a brand new rider with no experience riding a street motorcycle or no experience on riding dirt bikes, I've just seen a lot of people get hurt with taking on a bike that's too big just because they don't want to be known to have a riding the 250 or like I said, I went from a 250. I only had the 250 for one season. Then I moved up to a Ninja 500, and you get it. So and I know some people who've done really well with starting like on a 500. Not 500, whether it's a Ninja or some other cruiser style bike, which is fine. I think you're put yourself at risk if you're going anything bigger than a 500 if you have zero riding experience. I felt great with a 250 because at the time I had no actual motorcycle riding experience. Growing up, rode four-wheelers and three-wheelers, but it's obviously completely different than motorcycles. So I went from the 250, had that for one season. Then I went to the 500. I think I had that for just a little over one season. I think this is the second season I had. I ended up selling it and then getting the BMW. And I get it. You're the size of your bike, the physical size of the bike, not necessarily just the power, may be different. If you're a larger person, because I'm about 6 foot, anywhere from 180 to 190 some in weight. So the Ninja 250 from a physical standpoint, it didn't seem small to me. Obviously the power felt fine for the first couple months I rode it. Then I was like, okay, now the thing's, then you realize how underpowered it is when it only has like 25 horsepower. And I don't know, I think the Ninja 500 might have 40 some horsepower. So not much. And then jumping up with the BMW F800R, which BMW doesn't even make this model anymore. But I bought it brand new. I think I have 11,000 miles on it. And then I think it has almost 100 horsepower. So a huge jump up. Plenty, tons of power. It's not a super bike. But with something that has almost 100 horsepower, I think it's a really solid bike. So pretty much covered that first question. Well, sort of, are you too old to start riding a motorcycle? You're never too old to start riding. You obviously have to take consideration your physical health. Last few years, I've ridden very little because I had such bad hip pain, but now I've had hip replacement. I've ridden hundreds of miles this season already, more than I think more than I rode all year last year for the entire summer. So and if you got to consider your physical health, as long as you're in good physical health at any age, it's fine. And I think I was saying one of the bigger mistakes I see new riders do over the years is, like I said, it's biggest one is taking on a bike that's too powerful for them, and then not getting trained right. I don't know necessarily. We all get self-taught to a certain extent. I think I only rode like 100 miles before I took the MSF course, and I get the MSF course teaches you, just the basics, but all very important. About basic maneuvering, shifting the gears, braking, basic stuff that's very, very important for riding. And the crazy thing with that is, at the end of the course, you do a little test. At end of day 2, you do a test, go around this obstacle course, and pretty easy even for new riders. And after that, you take a written test. Then you have your endorsement. You just take it to the DMV, and you get your license. And I know for myself, I was a terrible rider at that point. But the good thing was I was still very cautious rider. So from there, but at least it gave me that ability to kind of just ride legally. So when I started riding 16 years ago. So this channel is all about just answering questions. If you have any questions about if you're thinking about getting into motorcycle riding, I think it's great. It can be dangerous, but my 14 years I've had some close calls, but I've never wrecked. Everybody's saying, "Oh, you're gonna wreck at some point." It's just not true. You get trained right, you can avoid those things. And like I said, I have close calls every year, but it's usually related to other drivers, because you do have to be aware of those other drivers. So my first question I get a lot, talking to people. Oh, we lost one person we had, they lost. So too old? No, you're never too old. Obviously, if you're in good physical health, you're never too old to ride. It can be challenging, but then next thing is, with that beginner, if you're a beginner rider, don't take on a bike too big, and then get trained right. MSF course is a great start, but you have to do a lot more. Just MSF course. Like I said, after I took that MSF course, I was just practicing around town, doing just slow riding, getting used to shifting gears still, because I was still stalling out the bike off and on. Just get comfortable with that. Then it takes another level with that. With a smaller bike, with a 250, if I took it on the highway, and I'm not talking like freeway, throughway, whatever you want to call it. I'm just talking about like the country roads, the main roads. That bike would get blown all over the place. But it was a great bike to learn on, because it was a light bike, so you got used to getting hit by all the crosswinds, but also no traction control. So you really had to learn to ride the bike. And then what can scare, I think, new riders the most, and what scared me the most probably riding, it's there's always that intimidation factor, learning something new when you first start riding. And then after that is, once you're on the road, it's the biggest fear is other cars. When you're driving by them, you're getting blasted by the wind that's going by them, and so that can be intimidating for some, and I think for everybody that takes a little bit to get used to. For new riders, once you do it for a little while, after that first season, you're not even going to think about it. As far as the intimidation factor, you always have to be aware of those cars out there. They've almost caused me quite a few wrecks over the years. Biggest mistakes, kind of talked about that a little bit. Biggest mistake I see riders make, saying, is just taking on a bike too big. Don't take on a bike that's too big. Within your experience level, and within your experience level, because we all hear the statistics of, new riders from that first 6 months, you end up having a wreck, or a lot of wrecks happen when you're taking a curve and you're going too fast. So it's just taking a little more precaution. We have enough to worry about with all the cars on the road. You don't want to have to worry about ourselves with our own ability. We cause the wreck. So just get trained right, take your time. Like I said, so many wrecks happen because we're taking on those curves, trying to go too fast on them. Slow down a little bit, and that'll help. So like I said, this channel is all about, I've been riding motorcycles for 14 years now. I started when I was 29. I started on a Ninja 250. Now I'm on with a bike behind me, BMW F800R. So about 14 years of riding. So I have a little of experience, but my channel is just about talking about motorcycles, motorcycle tips. We get somebody, then we lose them. So those are some of the biggest mistakes I see new riders make with riding. And some stuff on day one when you start riding is just take your time. It's going to be frustrating if you're brand new. You're not used to switching gears, dealing with the clutch. You're going to stall out. You're going to get frustrated with that. It's takes some practice. Just so take your time. Like I said, I know I was frustrated because that learning process can be definitely can be annoying. But just slow down, take your time. Don't get on a bike that's too big for yourself. So, a few questions I asked myself and answered since if we've had 1 or 2 viewers pop in and they've lasted a few seconds and then they're back out. So I know that's the way most live streams go for your very first live stream. I don't anybody I know talk to that's usually the way it goes. Our slide streams are tough. Somebody gave me a laughing emoji, but I have no viewers on there now. So I'm Sean. I ride a BMW F800R. I've been riding for about 14 years. So my channel is just all about riding motorcycles. Try to give tips for anybody who's thinking about getting into riding or getting back into riding after injuries. I know I've recently had a hip replacement. I'm back into riding. But have some experience over the 14 years that I've been riding, and it's I had a ton of questions when I first started. Oh, I've had 3 people at separate times. Never more than 1 person on the live stream. So no questions coming in. Just talking to myself. So a few questions. So I look at my notes. So I'm Sean Massey. Sorry, I shouldn't say. So welcome everybody. I'm Sean. So I've been riding. Currently I ride a BMW F800R. I've been riding since I was 29. I'm 43 now, so about 14 years. I started on a Ninja 250 to begin, and then I went from Ninja 250 to Ninja 500. Both those bikes I just basically rode for a season. So Ninja 250, Ninja 500. I really like those bikes, and now that I'm on the BMW F800R, which is a bike BMW doesn't make anymore. It was 2015 when I brought it new, but I've had it since then. It's been fantastic, just a whole nother level. Of course, a whole lot more power. This has almost, I think it has maybe like 95 horsepower. And I think the Ninja 250, Ninja 250 has like 25 horsepower. The Ninja 500 might have like 40. And I'm talking like the old school bikes. I thought they looked pretty cool, but great bikes to start on if you're looking for a non-cruiser. But both those, the old style Ninja 250 and the 500 have kind of that. They don't have a crotch rocket riding position. You know, you're fairly upright in on that bike. But then the Ninja 500, or excuse me, the BMW F800R here, it has a pretty upright position too. You lean forward slightly, put a little stress on your wrists and stuff, but not bad. It's far from much more comfortable position than you will be on a crotch rocket. So we're live here. Gotta take a break for a minute. Right back. Ron, are you there? Yeah. Log in and ask me a question.
Why? Get out of my house. Get out of my bed. I don't know how to get out.
Ronan, look, come here. Ronan, look, come here.
Stop. Stop, car. Where'd you go?
I'm right here. I can't chat on my own, but the mic's still going.
Oh, I peed.
It's not letting you put a chat in. Oh, right here. Good question. So just type a question like that, buddy.
Okay.
Quick intermission. Thought I could see comments come through. It's not even let me see comments. Oh, we got a comment from player level 43. What bike should I start on? So myself personally, I started on a Ninja. So I started on the Ninja 250, the old school style. And so the Ninja 250, the old school style, it wasn't like a full out crotch rocket. So you're pretty upright, but obviously you're not going to like that bike if you want a cruiser style. I know a lot of people I knew were getting like what was it, like the Rebel 500 or something. But I started on the Ninja 250. I don't know what the year was. It was maybe like early 2000s, but it was before they switched the way they look. So if you have zero experience, I think the 250 is a great one to start, or a 500. My second bike was the Ninja 500, which I think most would be comfortable starting on a 500 motorcycle. It's either one, but with no experience, I wouldn't go bigger than 500. Everybody's saying, 600, even this bike, they try to pass off as a beginner bike when it's not. It's not even close to beginner bike. I would have killed myself if I had this as my beginner bike. So that's our first question. I don't know if we have any others. Sorry, I got to click the screen to see any questions apparently. Sorry, answered that question. Any other questions coming through, let me know. So my pre-written questions, we only had a few viewers come in and out. I know that's common for first live stream. And so I've been riding my motorcycles. Turn the volume down a little bit, buddy. Thanks. And ask a question again. Type it in. Okay. Another interruption. So I've been riding motorcycles for the last 14 years. So all my channels, it's all about is giving tips about to new riders. Because I've learned some things over the years about riding. And then, I'm no professional motorcycle rider. A lot I don't know, but I'm still learning. And then, coming back from injuries. If you had some time off, that can always be challenging. So my preset questions. No other questions coming through. Player level 3. What BMW has? So the bike behind me, it's a BMW F800R. It's a 2015 model. So this the 2015. When I bought this, I don't know how many years more they did this model afterwards, but they don't do it anymore. I think they have one that looks pretty similar to this one, but it's I think it's a 900. Yeah, it's a 900, not the 800. So they don't do the 800, and I don't think any of their motorcycles anymore have the gas cap at the back of the bike. So, but it's a BMW F800R 2015. I think brand new when I bought it back then. It was like maybe 10,000, 11,000. So for how dependable a BMW bike has been, I have had zero problems with it. I think it's well worth it. So play level 43 asks, is this my favorite bike? Yes, it's my favorite bike by far. So I've had the so I start with the Ninja 250. I was saying it earlier, but we've only had a few people pop in and then pop back out. Ninja 250 was my favorite bike, or excuse me, not my favorite. This current bike is my favorite. The 250 Ninja, the old school style. That's why I started on. Then I went from the Ninja 250 to the 500. Both those I only was on for one season, but I like those bikes. But the BMW takes it a whole nother level. Definitely my favorite bike by far. And this bike, even though this particular model, they don't make it anymore. The 900, like I said, it looks pretty similar, just a little bit more updated. I know the speedometer and all that on the newer ones, 100% digital. And like I said, I don't think they do this anymore. Having the gas tank in the back, it's at the front. I think most of their bikes now. They kind of went back, doing what kind of set BMW apart by doing the gas tanks in the back. Now they've kind of went to whatever all the other motorcycles are doing, having them up front, I think, for most of their models, if not all of them. But the BMW F800R, definitely my favorite bike by far. And so play level 43 asked if I ever crashed my motorcycle before. No, I've never crashed my motorcycle. So even when I was, even during, when I was first learning to ride, people always say, oh, everybody's got to wreck at some point. You do not have to wreck at some point. I know somebody at the MSF course when I was taking, they tipped over their bike during the course, and I was like, oh, well, at least you got your first wreck, your first, tip over, or wreck, where not really wreck, but tip over out of the way. Right now, like, you have to have one. You don't have to have one. I've never had a wreck. 14 years of riding, the closest wrecks I've had, which close calls happen every year. Closest ones I've had is because of car drivers, not because of me. So only a couple people have been in and out of this live stream. I've had one person here consistently so far. So my preset questions, since I don't have too many questions coming in, but I know that's normal for first live stream. What age is too old to start riding? I don't think any age is too old to start riding. I've known people who are in like their 60s, 70s who start riding. And I know people who start way younger and now they're in their 60s, 70s and they're still riding. And Play Level 43 asks, what's my next bike? So I really liked, even when I bought this bike, I really liked the BMW, what is it, R9T, I think it's called, something like that. Or the next level up from this, I don't remember what it's exactly called. It's a BMW. I want to stick with BMW brand just because I really love the BMW bikes I've had. Like this bike, I've had no issues with. But BMW R9T I like, but that's more a cruiser, so it probably wouldn't be that one. I know you can get, it's kind of a mix of a cruiser to cafe racer almost. But I'd probably go with the next level up of this one. I can't remember what it is. It's a BMW. I'd look up. It's a 1000R, not the crotch rocket one, but something like that. I definitely want to go to 1000 next, because the next one up would have, the one I wanted to get would have 150 horsepower, and this one's just under 100 horsepower. So a good jump up in horsepower, more power than you really ever need. And I bought this. So this is so the bike behind me is a BMW F800R. So it's a 2015, and I bought it in 2015. Bought it brand new. So BMW doesn't even make this bike anymore, but they make one similar. The 900, the next step up, but it looks a little different. Kind of what was unique to BMW, I thought, was they always did the gas tank at the back of the bike, and I don't think any of their models do that anymore. But the time I've had this bike, I've had zero issues with it. Just routine maintenance, tires, oil change. I got this in 2015. I've had it for like 10, 11 years now, and no issues with it other than just routine maintenance. I've never chained the chain. I've spray all the time, so I've never had to replace it. Obviously do yearly oil changes, tires, but this bike has been extremely dependable. That's kind of why I want to stick with BMW for my next bike too. This BMW I have, like I said, it's a 2015, almost 100 horsepower. So for my third bike, I felt like I had a ton of power, because I was coming from a Ninja 500 that had I think they had 40 horsepower and like the old school style. My channel is all about, if you're thinking about riding, I highly recommend it, because it can be a safer hobby than most think. If you start on I didn't make the mistake of it, but I've seen many do it. They get a bike that's just too big. I started on a Ninja 250, old school style, like 20 horsepower. But it was plenty for when I was first starting. But of course, after that first season, I was done with it. And the Ninja 500, like I said, 40 some horsepower. One season, move on from it. And after the Ninja 500, I got the BMW, about this 2015, brand new, and almost 100 horsepower. And I had done nothing on it since. Play Level 43 asks, how fast is 100 horsepower? So how fast is 100 horsepower? So horsepower is how much power it has. So this has a 800cc engine, but your horsepower is kind of, I guess, is the ultimate test of how much power your bike has. So from a motorcycle standpoint, 100 horsepower before seemed like a lot, but this 100 horsepower now is like almost, it doesn't seem like much. It's far from a super bike. I've had this bike up just over 100 miles per hour. I don't know what the top speed is, but like I said, from a perspective of power-wise, the fact that it has almost 100 horsepower, it kind of puts it like in that mid-range for bikes now. Kind of barely puts it in mid-range for having 100 horsepower. But so I said, my channel is all about my 14 years experience in riding. It can be extremely safe hobby if you learn how to ride right. Don't take on a bike that's too big. Player Level 43 asks, why did you buy this bike? So when I had the 250, got rid of that after a year. I think I had 1 year I didn't ride at all. Had the Ninja 500. Wasn't really planned on buying another bike. And then I started looking. And then when I started looking, I came across BMW. and some of the people I knew who rode said how dependable BMW was. You know, BMW from a car brand has a good reputation, but I wasn't fully certain about BMW from a motorcycle brand. But a few people I've known said, oh, their engines last forever. So I went with BMW after test riding the BMW F800R. But like I said, this is 2015. They don't even make it anymore, but they make the 900, which is real similar. But went with it after test riding, just a phenomenal bike. And I've, other than routine maintenance, I've had zero issues with it. I do oil changes, tire changes, not every year because I've had some time off from riding. But my channel is all about, so player level 43 has a question, is BMW the best brand you could get? So I think, you know, the brand of bike, you know, me calling it the best is kind of, that's opinion based. From a non, like, you know, true, you know, like my opinion, yeah, it's the best. But I've only ridden over the 14 years I've been riding, I've only ridden a few different bikes. So really only two different brands, Kawasaki and BMW. Kawasaki, I had no issues with Kawasaki during the time I had them, but BMW, from the instant I rode this bike, just felt like more of a premium brand. But you're really not going to pay a whole lot more for it, because when I bought this in 2015, I bought it for 10 grand, and some people were, oh, you probably paid like 20 because it's BMW. No, I didn't pay 20. Even paying like 10 or 11 for an 800cc is probably a little higher than you would pay if you went like with a Kawasaki brand new. Like I said, zero issues. For the foreseeable future, that's a brand I'm going to stick with because I've had just such success with it. So one last time through, I'm into 33 minutes on this live stream. We've had a couple of people pop in and out, a few questions. So I've been, my name is Sean. I've been riding BMW F800R for the last 11 years. I've been riding since I was 29. I'm 43 now, so about 14 years. I've gained a decent amount of experience over the 14 years of riding. So I'm just here about, you know, share some ride footage. If you check out my channel with my shorts or my long form videos, but I'm here about offering tips to people who are thinking about getting into riding. Or new riders, because I think it's a safer hobby than people realize. And 14 years of riding, I have had zero wrecks. Every season, I have some close calls, but that's usually every year is because of cars. So play level 43 asks, would you get a different brand? So like I was saying earlier, I think there's a lot of good brands out there. I had no issues with my Kawasaki. I think Ducati, though, is probably the other brand that looks pretty good to me. They have a couple bikes I kind of like, but even their prices are a little more outrageous than BMW. So for my foreseeable future, I think I'm going to, like I said, I really like the BMW R9T or the BMW the 1000 naked bike they have, which I think that has like 1,000 horsepower, which would be not 1,000, 150 horsepower. This has just about 100 horsepower, so it'd be a big jump to get the 1000 cc BMW from my next bike. But this, as I was saying, this channel is just about offering tips if you're thinking about riding or if you're currently riding, like myself. Due to shoulder surgery, hip replacement, getting back into riding can definitely be tough. I don't think you're ever too old to ride, but just you gotta start off with something. I think one of the biggest mistakes, in my experience, is people take on bikes that are too big for them. For you, if you have no experience, if you've been riding like motocross, something like that, that's different. But if you have zero motorcycle experience, I missed that question from player level 43. What color would you want on a bike? I don't know. I like the colors of this bike here, the black and blue. I think the next one, it might be, I think they offer like black. It's a pretty nice bike color-wise. I haven't really thought about that too much of a color. But simple question, like say, anybody has any questions or things, if you're thinking about getting riding, just drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. I'm doing this live stream from my garage, and seeing the comments on my phone. First live stream for my channel, and all just about offering tips. I love riding motorcycles. Been doing it. Have had some time off from injuries. Just had hip replacement, but I'm full out. Haven't been riding. Already have a few hundred miles in it. And if you know anything about Central New York, to have even hundreds of miles in and still in May is lucky, just weather-wise. So my first question I kind of had pre-written. We've had some people come in and out. We've had player level 43 asking a lot of questions. Any questions, just drop them in the chats. But I had a ton of questions when I first started riding 14 years ago. But you're too old, you're never too old to ride. And then the big mistake I've seen riders do, they just take on a bike that is just too big. Don't take it on a bike that's too big. The reason I feel like I'm not a statistic right now after 14 years of riding was I started on player level 43. I said, would you keep it if you get a new bike? Yeah, I definitely want to keep this bike when I get a new bike. I like this bike so much. I'm definitely going to keep it. After having it for 11 years. Power-wise and stuff, I've definitely outgrown it, but it's still a great bike. But any questions about getting into riding? So you're never too old, and then I think probably one of the most, like I said, don't take on a bike that's too big. Everybody's a little different. I started on Ninja 250, the old school style. I only was on it one season, but it helped me learn the basics. I took the MSF course, then I was on the Ninja 500, and then now I'm for the last 11 years, I've been riding this BMW F800R, zero problems with it. But 14 years of riding, I've had no wrecks. You start off, on a bike that you can handle, learn right, just practice the basics. If you have any questions, questions, anything you'd like to ask, just ask them in the comments. It does take me doing this live stream on my phone, it's actually working pretty good. I see the comments come up pretty quickly on the screen for my live stream. But like I said, don't make this mistake. I see, they always say, biggest thing with the new riders, they have wrecks is within your first 6 months, or you're overtaking a curve too fast. Learn the basics, but if you have any questions, I'm far from an expert on riding, but it's just from my experience over the last 14 years of riding, I'll share. And then biggest mistake we covered. And then I don't want to take the live stream too much longer. I'm going to run through I'll probably go maybe to 45 minutes. We'll see if we get any more questions. So I'm Sean. This is Sean Rides BMW, my channel. So I like to share motorcycle tips. If anybody has any questions, just drop in the comments. I had a ton of questions 14 years ago when I was first starting to learn to ride. So that's why I'm doing the live chat as well. So just ask questions. I'll see them come up on my phone. And there's tons of things come up when you first start riding. And then my first question I have preset, since I'm not really getting much through the comments. What age is too old to start riding? I don't think you're ever too old to start riding, as long as you feel you're healthy enough to ride. Start learning. Learn the right way. It doesn't matter what age you are. Don't start on a bike that's too big. I started on the Ninja 250. I'm about 6 foot. Ninja 250 was fine. I went to the Ninja 250 and then the Ninja 500. Some people start on the 500, which is fine, but I want to start on anything bigger. I would have killed myself if I started on a bike. If I started on this bike, the BMW F800R, I would have killed myself because it's a lot more complicated. To me, you're never too old to start riding. And a common mistake over my 14 years of riding is just don't take on a bike that's too big. What really helped me over the 14 years of riding not have a wreck is ride within my limits. A question from Play Level 43, how many times have you had to switch the battery? So this bike, we have some pretty bad winters in Central New York. So I think I've switched this battery like 3 times. I've switched the battery I think 3 times in this bike. The battery's not cheap. I think when I bought the battery, actually I bought the battery this year, it was almost $200. So almost $200 to replace the battery in this bike. But Other than that, there's really been no maintenance issues with this bike. I replaced the battery a few times, do the oil once a year, tires, that's it. I've never replaced the chain. I never replaced the brakes. Everything's still in great functioning condition. That's BMW is such, like I said, my experience in my 11 years with BMW, I wouldn't pick a different brand right now. Since I can't buy, 5 different bikes, BMW is the brand I'm going to stick with. So we covered, we're at almost at 42 minutes. We're only got a few more minutes. Some of my questions I had written out ahead of time as we got questions coming in. What age is too old to start riding? There's no age too old to start riding. Just go out and do it. Learn. I think I did the MSF course. I really feel like that's a great course, even though what they show in the MSF course is so basic. When I started riding, I had my permit and I was just like riding around the block, and then a cop pulled me over. It didn't give me a ticket, but you can't even ride by yourself when you have a permit. You have to have another person on a motorcycle riding with you, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I just took the MSF course. It does teach you some basic good, some skills that are decent. Of course, they're beneficial, but plus you bypass, you automatically just take that endorsement and get your license at the DMV after you take that course. So it's really good. And then what scares new riders? I know for me, my intimidation factor for new riding when I started 14 years ago was you don't have the protection around you. You're going, maybe 70, 80, 50, whatever, however fast you're going on the road, and you have other cars coming past you, and you're getting, hit by all that crosswinds and winds from those semi-trucks can be intimidating. So, that can be a scare factor for some. And then biggest mistake I've seen new riders make, probably from those who I've known, is taking on bikes that are too big. But if anybody has questions, I've been riding for 14 years, certainly no expert, but if you're thinking about riding, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. But biggest mistake I've seen riders just taking on a bike too big. Nobody wants to start off on a small bike, but the great thing about starting off a small bike, my Ninja 250, I think I bought it for $1,000. Maybe it's between $1,000 to $1,500. So you can start riding really cheaply. You can get into the sport of riding motorcycles really cheap. You don't have to spend a lot of money. My first bike, Ninja 250, I think I spent $1,500. So great way to get in cheap. Insurance is extremely cheap for motorcycles. This bike, now that's 11 years old, I think I pay $100 for insurance for the entire year. And even when I first bought it brand new, I think I was only paying maybe $30 or $40 a month at brand new, but now it's only $100 a year, and that's for full coverage. So the cost of riding motorcycles is pretty cheap, depending on how, obviously it's expensive if you want it to be. You can go out there and buy a $50,000 motorcycle, or you can get something cheap, as I did my first bike. I missed the question. We're going to go one more minute. Play level 43. What age should you start riding at on that bike? So I guess it depends on what state you're in, but I believe you can start riding a motorcycle. Maybe wrong, but I thought you could start riding a motorcycle. Like I said, it could vary between countries and states. I think you can start riding on the road on a motorcycle at 16. But like I said, I think it's 16 years old. You can start on the road. But that might have changed something. I had to maybe look up. Because I thought for New York it was 16 years old you could ride on the road for a bike. But like I said, for Central New York anyway, if you get a permit for a motorcycle, so for Central New York, when I first got my Ninja 250 14 years ago, I had a permit. A cop seen me going around the block. He just pulled me over. Didn't give me a ticket, but said I couldn't do that. So you're supposed to have another rider with you on another motorcycle when you're riding the motorcycle. Like they're going to help you much. So I took the MSF course. They do teach you some. They teach you a lot of basic skills that are really important. But the MSF course is great because it bypasses. You just take their endorsement. You go to the DMV, you get your license. Because like I said, when I had my permit, I got pulled over, and the cop said, "Oh, you can't ride. You have to have another motorcycle rider riding with you when you only have your permit." which like another motorcycle riding on another motorcycle with me. What good are they going to do me? So it's kind of made me laugh. But that's the good thing about MSF courses. You learn some basic valuable skills, but also bypasses. You instantly, so you get that endorsement, take it to DMV. Now you have your license. Now you can, and it still took me that whole summer just to get comfortable riding with basic skills. Getting used to crosswinds, getting used to switching gears in and out. But well, we are at 46 minutes into the live stream, and I think I'm had enough. Like I said, anybody interested in any tips about getting into riding? I've been riding 14 years safely, no wrecks. Player level 43. What was the fastest you went? So the fastest I've went on this bike, I'm pretty cautious, but I think I've got this bike up to maybe like 105, 110. So I'm pretty cautious on a motorcycle. So some of the videos you see on YouTube, people going crazy speeds, but this isn't a super bike. This has about 95 horsepower. Not a super bike, but it has a decent amount of power if you're an intermediate rider like myself. This is my third bike. But like I said, start off on, if you're interested, just drop any questions in the links. I've been riding for 14 years. If you're thinking about getting into riding, I had tons of questions come up when I was first learning. But what has kept me alive riding is I started on Ninja 250, started on something small. Then I learned the basic skills, went from the Ninja 250 to the Ninja 500, and now I'm on the BMW. I've been riding this bike for 11 years. But the great thing about starting off on a smaller bike when you're first learning is you can get it cheap. 14 years ago when I bought the Ninja 250, I think I bought it for $1,500. And it was like, that's so cheap. You can get into the sport really cheaply. You don't have to spend 20 grand on your first bike. If any questions, just drop them in the comments. You can get into riding motorcycles really cheap. Get something used. Like I said, I bought my first bike for $1,500. And I think the Ninja 500 I bought for $1,500 as well. So this bike a little more expensive. I think it was about 10 grand, but fairly priced on insurance. So I want to keep the cost to ride and get into the sport of riding is fairly cheap if you start off, if you're first learning. I recommend getting on a smaller bike anyway. Like I said, my first bike, a Ninja 250, I bought for $1,500. So you can get into the sport fairly cheaply. And then player level 43 says 6'7", 6'7". That's not really a question. All right, so we're at 48 minutes. So we're going to stop at, we're going to stop at 50. Went longer than expected. So welcome to the channel. This is, I'm Sean. So I talk about, I've been riding for 14 years on motorcycles. But if you're thinking about getting riding, I would highly recommend it. I've been riding for 14 years. No wrecks. You don't have to have wrecks. Everybody you always got to wreck your motorcycle. At least we don't. Start off a bike that you can handle. Don't start on something that's too big. Learn how to ride it right. Like I said, the great thing about starting on a bike that's small is I started on the Ninja 250. I picked it up used for $1,500. And I almost paid, it was like almost nothing for insurance for the whole year. You can get into the sport of riding a motorcycle very cheap. All right, looks like, any questions that come up, just drop them in the comments. But it looks like I am going to be out here. Oh, player level 43 says he's out even before me. So I'm Sean. I've been riding motorcycles for about 14 years, just sharing what I've learned over the years. If you have questions about motorcycles, you're thinking about getting into riding, drop those questions in the comments. 14 years ago when I started riding, I had tons of questions that came up. But you can get into the sport of riding motorcycles really cheap. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Pick up something used. If it's like I said, if you have no experience riding, I would start on a smaller bike. I'd rather, start on a 250 or a 500. Me personally, I wouldn't start on anything bigger than a 500. It lets you, you're going to want to upgrade after maybe a couple seasons, but who cares? You start off safely. But like I said, you get in the sport of riding motorcycles really cheap. start off on something small. Like I said, I started on the Ninja 250, went from there. Ninja 500 after that, and now I've been riding the BMW F800R for the last 11 years. But any questions? Like I said, I'm here. My whole channel is about, you know, I share some videos on, many videos on riding tips. After 14 years, I'm no pro, but I have some things I've learned over the 14 years. But any questions about riding, or if you're thinking about getting into riding, it's a lot safer than everybody says it is. It is dangerous, but if we learn how to ride right, you know, you can minimize it. I've never had a wreck in 14 years of riding. Just learn how to ride right. Don't take on a bike that's too big. But if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. So that's why I went live. Check out my channel. I have a lot of videos on, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some videos on some tips on my shorts. Long form, I have some ride videos. But, you know, check it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in watching more content. I know we've had a few people jump in and out, but any questions, just drop them in the comments. All right, that's it. That's live stream number 1 about done. But any questions, if you're thinking about getting into riding motorcycles, drop a comment. I'll try to do my best to answer any questions. I've been riding motorcycles for about 14 years now. So my experience in the last 14 years of riding, I can share. I'm no pro. I know when I first started riding, I had tons and tons of questions to come up. All right, that's it. All right, thanks everybody. Bye.